Okay, hello. Hi everybody, can you hear me? We're going to do a little sound check here, so can you hear me over the synthesizer? I can turn the synth down a little bit. How do I sound now? Can you hear me? We're going to try using these wireless mics. Hopefully it works. Does it work? Let me know. Yep.
Check me.
Everyone's saying yes.
Is my mic there too?
I can see your mic too. You talk quiet. I'll turn yours up a little bit.
I talk loudly.
You do not talk loudly.
Okay. I'm going to download an app.
Okay. All right, everybody, welcome to the totally and completely professional announcement, hangout, chat, jam with Taiga. The jam really is tomorrow with Herman and Bus Crates, but today Michael is here with me, Michael Johnsen. He's the analog researcher and engineer at Pittsburgh Modular. And I thought it would be awesome to have him come in and hang out with us, and we're going to sort of talk about this. There's a ton of videos out there already showcasing the sounds and everything, so I figured we'd give you a little bit of the story and also make some sounds too, because sounds are super fun. But the idea is that we have a little bit of an outline here. We're going to sort of walk through the instrument, and once we get to the end of the outline here, then we are going to just sort of hang out and answer questions and make some weird sounds. So I'm hoping this will be about an hour or so, but this is what I'm here to do today. So
an hour or so total, not the hour or so following that.
Yeah. An hour or so total. hopefully, you know, we can walk through this thing in 20, 30 minutes. But we're here to sort of hang out. We have the chat room open, so if you guys have questions, make sure you @ Pittsburgh Modular Synthesizers in your comments so that it shows up big and bright on my screen, and then I know to glance over at it. Otherwise, I end up focusing so much on what I'm doing that a lot of times I miss this stuff. But I'm a bit peaky. All right, I can fix that.
Peaky?
Peaky. I can turn me down a touch, so that's good. Is that better? Hopefully. I'm a peaky kind of person. I don't know if this syncs off or not. I don't know what I could do about that. But this is what we have.
We can talk through the sides of our mouths.
We could talk through the sides of our mouths. Is the sync off? Is it just one person? It's better now? Better. Okay, good. All right, well, if the sync is off, then just think about other things. I don't know.
Don't look at our lips.
Yeah. We'll talk like this. We can put our masks back on, and then it'll be totally fine.
How is the sync now?
I think the sync is great now. So anyway, welcome to my basement. Michael, welcome to my basement. Although you've been here for about an hour and a half now. But that's all right. I didn't say welcome earlier. So let's talk about Taiga. Taiga has been an instrument that we have been working on now for 3.5 years. This instrument started, right at NAMM when I met the guys from Create Audio. We had just sort of finished the cycle of Voltage Lab, and the Voltage Lab was shipping to customers. I think we had all the orders out at that point, and we were kind of debating what to do next. Fortunately, I had the pleasure of meeting the entire Create Audio team at NAMM that year, and we had some ideas together. So this is, sorry, I'm going to keep messing with my audio here as I look at the little meter. this is sort of the culmination of 3.5 years of work of us saying, okay, what can we really do to push monosynths forward? We had the SV1, we had the Voltage Lab. I wanted something that was sort of more playable than the Voltage Lab, but shared the usability of the SV1. And that was the beginning of Taiga. Now it's sort of moved a long way from that over the years, but that was the idea. That was the spark that sort of led us down the trail. What we ended up really doing was taking a lot of ideas from the microvolt, which I think was an underappreciated instrument because it was a little quirky, and at that point we were definitely a very Eurorack-centric company. So to do something that wasn't Eurorack was a little out of character for us at the time. But a lot of the ideas in that synth, I think, were incredibly strong, and that was, again, pointing us in this direction.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for the commentary on that. That was good. So
yes.
This is going to go well.
You are right.
This is why Michael's here.
Best paid yes man in the business.
He's here for the flavor. So a little bit about Taiga. It is a 60 HP. And maybe I'll put it up on screen here so you can see it. There we go.
Nice.
Nice. It is a 60 HP Eurorack module. It comes with a case with these nice wooden sides and a power supply built in. It comes with 2 bags of patch cables, so you have 10 patch cables to start with. And it comes with a little MIDI dongle, so you can hook it up to your DAW or to a little keyboard. I have a little Akai keyboard. I have it plugged into at the moment. I can't really play keyboard. I play with my fingers. I'm more of a sequencer person, but we'll work with what we have today. So yeah, it's 60 HP Eurorack format. It's fully modular, although it is normal. So as you can see, I don't need patch cables to play it. And if you don't patch it up, you do have sort of a standard subtractive synthesis signal flow where you would start with the oscillators into the mixer, through the filter. You have your 2 envelopes, one normal to the filter, and then one normal to the dynamics, which can function as a VCA or a low-pass gate. And then it passes through the echoes, which is a BBD analog delay, and then your output. So without any patch cables, that's what you have. But it is fully modular in the same way that the SV1 was fully modular. And that what I mean by that is each oscillator has all the patch points it needs to be used independently. So you could use this as a bit of a larger Eurorack system. You could take just the oscillator out. The filter has all the filters ins and outs.
Or send external modulation sources into those oscillators.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So even if you don't have a large Eurorack setup, like this keyboard has a CV out, we could patch that in there, or anything that produces CV would work. The mixer, everything is fully modular. So if this does go into a Eurorack, or you start with this and you're thinking of expanding into Eurorack, this could be a central hub for a really nice Eurorack setup. And it's certainly been mine for the past year as I've been testing it and working with it, having to take it out every time I go do a live jam with somebody. But it has a great set of pieces that were designed to work together, but you can also pull them apart. So that is section 1. Now we're going to talk about the oscillators. The oscillators, you have 3 nearly identical oscillators. And I'll tell you about the differences as we go through it. You have a pitch tune, and depending on whether you have the MIDI mode on or off, you can see on this oscillator the MIDI mode's on. On this oscillator 3 over here, the MIDI mode's off. If you have MIDI mode on, then the pitch is a fine-tune knob. And this is where the oscillators differ slightly. So the first oscillator just gives you enough range that you can get it in tune. The second oscillator is going to give you an octave in either direction, and then the third oscillator gives you 2 octaves in either direction when you have MIDI on. When you turn MIDI off, it's a full range analog oscillator like we've done in the past with our standalone Eurorack stuff, so you can go full LFO up to high audio rate with it. FM, this is normaled to the LFO, each oscillator.
Which is the little red
Yes. Which
knob
is,
and the LED indicator just under it.
yeah. And that will go in 2 rates as well. So you can get a low audio rate on that down to very, very slow. But that's further down on the list. So we'll get to that.
Sorry.
Stick to the script.
All right.
Okay. Following the FM, we get to the really interesting bits and what really makes these oscillators, I think, unique and makes them Taiga oscillators, and that is the shape control. Now, you do have 4 waveforms to choose from: sine, triangle, saw, and pulse, but we call them seeds in Taiga. And the reason we call them seeds is each of the waveforms goes through so many wave shapers even before it hits the wave folder that you never really see those raw waveforms at the output. So if you would patch directly out of oscillator 1,
Just like the tree doesn't look like the seed that it came from.
exactly. So what we're doing, and I can give a little bit of audio here.
Thank God.
So we have, we'll open up the filter, get a plain sound going here. So this is the shape, and you can hear we have, we'll start with our sine wave up here. We have a shape that really doesn't look much like a sine wave. In fact, it looks quite a bit like a triangle, but it sounds like a sine wave. So the idea is that we're calling it a seed because that shows you sort of where it began, but not necessarily what you're going to see. And then as we add shape, we have this 6-stage wave folder that very smoothly adds a lot of really nice harmonics. We have a question asking, how does the single shape knob compare to the functionality of the axis asymmetric timbre of the VRL? This would be the timbre control from the VRL. Some of the other functionality we've sort of baked in as static in the position we thought was most interesting. And then you have access to the timbre, which is the wave folder for 4 of the 5 oscillators. So we'll start with the sine, and then you can see if we hit it again, we go to sine and the triangle LED lights up. What that means is we're hitting sine warped. Now we're running the sine wave through our warp circuit, which what that does is greatly changes the shape without changing the harmonic content or the sound, but it then hits the wave folder differently.
So, and when it hits the wave folder, it produces a different set of harmonics than it would had it not been passed through the warp circuit.
Exactly.
Right. So that's why the idea of the seed then is makes sense, because it's only where the sound started, not where it ends. It's the thing that gave birth to everything downstream, but doesn't necessarily resemble its origin.
See, that is why you're here. You can describe things in a way that I'm incapable of. It was brilliant.
Sure it was. Okay, keep moving.
Okay.
Keep moving.
So now with these waveforms like the sine wave that has very few harmonics to start with, running it through the wave or through the warp circuit, you don't get a huge difference. It's noticeable, but it's more subtle. If we move on to like a saw wave, this is really where you can hear a big difference.
So this is the traditional folded saw sound, where it becomes sinusoidal every once in a while, and then the edges of the sawtooth reappear, and it has that nice kind of flickering harmonic quality.
But now if we run that through the warp circuit, it just becomes gummy and chewy and thick.
Right. Even though technically it had very similar origins.
If you've watched any of the live streams that we've done with bus crates recently, I was using the Wespes for the bass lines, and this is basically the sound that I was using. It's that saw wave through a warp circuit. Really gives you that chunky bass guitar sound, which I'm a huge fan of.
Deep and not harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also makes a nice motorcycle sound.
It really does. It's very motoric. Or I guess that's a rhythm word. I mean motor-like.
Little motor.
Chuggy. Motorboaty.
And then, so the sine, the triangle, the saw all have the warp circuit and then the timbre control of the wave folder. The pulse, though, we wanted pulse width. So
Traditional pulse width.
Yeah. So this one gives you, the pulse wave gives you traditional pulse width. It does not go through the wave folder.
And that's modulatable for standard pulse width modulated type sounds are very recognizable and beloved.
Yes, and a sound that I enjoy quite a bit, and I didn't want to not have it. So we had it, but what we can do...
And just folding the square wave unwarped sucks.
Yeah.
So why not turn that into a pulse width modulation control and actually get something out of it?
Exactly, and I think these folding a warped square wave does sound really nice.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it sounds... I keep getting excited and peeking my mic here. But I think it sounds very similar to... Turn this down here. I think it sounds very similar to the saw. So we thought, well, because the saw's there, let's let the pulse be a pulse width, and...
it does, because they both have odd and even harmonics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I still wanted a way to interact with the wave folder when we had the saw active. So what we could do is have pulse and sine active together. And that gives you pulse width and the wave folder on the sine wave, which is very nice. Most of my little demo sequences here that you're going to hear today are made using a random arpeggiator generator. And the reason this feature was in the Voltage Lab 2 as well, and the reason it exists is because as we're testing these things, a lot of times we just need some sound. So I came up with, well, let's just make a little arpeggiator random generator. And so that's what we have. And you just turn on the ARP mode, and then you hold edit, touch hold, and it generates a sequence, and it tries to stick to standard lengths, but it can be anything up to 32 steps. It tries typically at 16, but it can be all over the place. Some of them are brilliant, and some of them are terrible. You know, it's not AI. It's just random number generators building sequences. Although I did use this.
It's not AI.
It's
like,
not AI.
Whatever that is.
But I did. I used this on several of the demo tracks.
Yeah.
The demo from yesterday of my friend Britt riding in a kayak was generated using the random generator. I generated like 4 or 5 sequences using the same sound, and then I just chopped it up in Ableton, and that was that was the song. Super fun. Okay, so those are the core functions of the oscillators. Now what we also have, and let me just turn on a really basic arp here. I'll turn down these. We also have hard sync, so I can take, say, the sine wave out of oscillator 2 into the sync input of oscillator 1. Get that nice hard sync sound. And we can also then take the sine out of oscillator 3.
So you're syncing it to the sine, not to the folded version, but you could sync to the folded version for more craziness.
You could.
Yes.
So if we do that.
It wasn't actually a question. It was one of those, hey folks at home. It's like when the reporters already know the answer.
Oh, you weren't talking to me. You were talking to them.
Hey, wait a minute. What if? It was one of those. Are you saying I could patch that externally? Yes. I'm sorry, go on.
Okay, so here's an example of Michael's patch, which is taking the output. We have the sine wave running through the waveform here, so it's sort of a crazy shape. And we're using that to sync oscillator 1, and now we're also modulating the shape of the sync signal. And that's pretty cool.
So it sort of slides through a different kind of a sync.
Yeah. If we just give it... Get some very weird sounds that way. I like it. Turn the arpeggiator off. Just for a moment, everybody take a deep breath. Okay.
What's next, Rick?
Okay, next on the list is the mixer. The mixer is great because it's all great. No, the mixer is interesting though because although looks like a 4-channel mixer with each oscillator normal to one of the channels and then noise normal to the 4th channel. If you're familiar with the SV1 synth, we did a similar thing with this one where you can break it apart, repatch it, and use it as multiple mixers. So this is good if you want to mix CV signals and use those somewhere else, but you don't need the full audio mixer. So you could break it into a 2-channel mixer and then a 3-channel mixer. And the reason you get a 2-channel mixer with channel 1 and channel 2 and then a 3-channel mixer with channel 3 and channel 4 is you also get to add in the preamp. That's right.
Wait, there's a preamp?
There's a preamp.
I gotta turn the dork down slightly. So the preamp is the two little blue knobs.
The preamp is, and it has a gain of 1 to a gain of 30. A gain of 30.
A Game of Thrones to 30. No,
yeah,
1 to 30, which means that you can't. It starts at a gain of 1, which is important to remember. So you can't turn it down to 0. It starts at 1 and goes to 30.
You can't turn the gain down to 0, but it has a dedicated level control.
Right. So you can turn something up to the point of distortion and then control how much of that distortion you want to introduce to the mix with the level control. So you can have something's distorted but quiet.
And I think that's super helpful if you're trying to do, like we were doing during the drone as we were setting up. We were using feedback from the delay outs through the preamp, and it was set to 30x gain, but I was riding the level so that it was just sort of right on the edge of feeding back. And I think that sounds really, really nice. If you guys can hear my furnace, I apologize. I'm going to turn it off. And if you can't hear it, I'm going to turn it off. Anyway. So, Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes of the preamp and why it's maybe more than just a way to get an external keyboard or a guitar into there?
Well, there's other stuff you can do with it. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean, well, because it has.
Why would we put a preamp in here?
We're doing soft clipping in there to get overdrive.
Right.
And
So there's soft clipping in the preamp circuit too, which means that you're not just going to get harsh square waves like or rat pedal style out of the thing. You get a nice soft distortion out of it. One of the things you can do very nicely, which is what we did in the sort of pre-stream drone, was Rick passed a feedback loop through it and then just sort of rode the gain. So you're able to introduce gain into the paths in the synthesizer, which changes the game in a lot of, the gain changes the game in a lot of places, simply because then you can make self-generating patches, as well as the things that are maybe a little bit more obvious and pedestrian to do with an external preamp, like just introducing a signal from the outside world into the box. Some other source that you like and want to pass through the filters, uses control sources, chop up with the ADSR, turn into beats with the dynamics controller, and so on, all could find their way into the instrument with a suitable amount of gain through the humble little preamp and mixed with the other stuff.
humble.
Humble preamp. I'm just a preamp.
Question in the chat, is any of the flamingo circuitry incorporated into the design somewhere? No.
No. Next.
Next. That is in the Voltage Lab 2, which we will talk about later. And by later, I mean later in the year. Another question, same as the preamp on the Wolf? Yes. This has the same basic preamp circuitry as the Wolf, with the difference of this is 2 knobs and the Wolf was laid out a bit different, but it's going to give you that same type of sound, yes. Okay, now it's time to talk about the LFO. So the LFO is a free-running analog LFO. You have a triangle wave and a square wave out. The triangle wave is the wave that's normaled to the modulation destinations, like the FM or the shape controls on the oscillator or the CV input for the filter. But you can patch over that with the square wave if you like. And again, this is an analog LFO. It has 2 ranges, slower range, and then we hit edit and mode to change to the higher range. Very simple LFO.
And it goes into low audio rate. Well, you'll hear it soon enough.
Yeah, we could probably even
patch it up as a control signal on the filter or something.
Yeah, we could go into the preamp.
Neato.
We could. Turn all this other stuff down here. So this is our square wave LFO. We can overdrive it, although it's a square wave, so it's now a square wave.
Even squarer.
What if we take the triangle wave? Let's try that.
Square it up.
So here's our triangle wave. Very triangly. And now we're adding...
It becomes a distorted rectangle and then a nice hard rectangle.
That sounds nice. This is completely manual. There's no voltage control over this LFO.
But you can use it to trigger the sample and hold or envelope generators if you want to, or other kind of utility functions. It's free running and has a nice knob on it, in addition to the hidden stuff in the modulation section of the control part of the panel, which we'll discuss later.
Yes. If you do need a voltage-controlled LFO, or if that's something that your patch requires, you can use any of the oscillators as a voltage-controlled LFO. They do go way down into LFO range, and they make great LFOs. Each oscillator has a dedicated sine wave out, perfect for modulation. And there is a digital LFO in the control section that is synced to the clock source, whether the clock source be internal or MIDI or an external gate signal. So you do have clock synced modulation options, just not with this knob. but what it does is very nice. So next on the list, as we scroll down here, we run to the filter. Now, we've explained the filter a lot of times.
Yes.
A lot of times. But it's a good story, so I think we should tell it again. The filter is the first circuit that Michael and I worked together on. It really was meant to be the sound of Pittsburgh Modular, and I wanted something that was very smooth and very creamy, and the idea was no dead spots filter, so you could grab the frequency knob, sweep the full frequency, which you can't hear anything right now, so not a good demo.
What kind of a demo is this?
There we go. So the idea is you can sweep that full frequency range, and there's no dead spots in there. Not a resonance. And it just sounds creamy smooth. Now, this is probably the 6th or 7th iteration of this filter that we've done. The most recent, besides from this, we had the filter of crows, and we also had the East Beast. The East Beast, actually, the filter is nearly identical to this one. The East Beast is where we were testing out the filter response circuitry that switches between the responses. So the filter is entirely analog all the way through as far as the signal path goes, but to control that signal path, we did use some digital switching. So that's why with one button we can switch from low pass to low pass and band pass to band pass and high pass. High pass. Maybe I can get a more interesting thing going here.
Oh yeah.
Some audio rate modulation.
And there are 2 dedicated control voltage inputs to the filter, which makes it easy to mix multiple control signals into the filter and get more complicated responses. Another thing maybe to mention about the topology is that since the mixer feeds the filter directly, you can control the gain of the signal into the filter, which is an overlooked part of making your filter sound best, is actually being able to tune down how hard you allow the input signal to drive the filter to get the most out of the resonance. So don't assume that you need to turn all the mixer knobs all the way up to make the filter sound best. It may actually sound best with things turned down ever so slightly, and then the filter really has a chance to shine. That's one of the things that really works well in the integrated instrument environment that's hard to encourage people to do in a more modular environment. Wow, what a boring comment. Go. Next.
To build on that boring comment, that's actually a great patch. And if you're familiar with our Filter of Crows Eurorack module, or the filter, the Crows, the original Crows Eurorack module, where we had that crazy overdrive before the filter circuit, that was really a prototype of this circuitry here. So you could do the same thing with Taiga. All you would have to do is take the output of your mixer, go into the preamp, come out of the preamp, and go into the filter. So then you have that gain, so you could really drive the signal hard into the filter, but use the level control.
So distorted but quiet into the filter.
Exactly, and I can show you how to do that right now. Right now we're only listening to oscillator 1, so I'm just going to go out of oscillator 1 into the preamp, and then out of there into the filter. You can hear that this sounds the same, but now we have this gain. That adds additional harmonics. Oopsies.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Now the big difference between like the filter of crows and this setup is the filter of crows, the gain was at 70, and the gain here is at 30.
Which is really only half as much. No, I mean, like if you think that's not as good as the Crow, like the difference between 30 and 60, it's like too much versus too much times 2.
Well, and if you think of it as...
That's a lot of gain. For a synthesizer level signal, that's a lot of gain.
Yeah, if you think of it as, at this point, the signal is probably, what, 6 volts peak to peak? Mm-hmm. And we're dealing with a ceiling of...
12 or 10 and a half or something, yeah.
So at 2x, you're already squaring off. So at 30x, you've made some kind square waves.
Right, additional harmonics.
Yeah, I think when we were playing Oscillator 1 through, you couldn't really hear much because we were actually playing a square wave.
Right.
Into it.
Right.
So we were squaring off the square wave. But you can hear it now that I've patched in Oscillator 2, which is a sine wave, and Oscillator 3, which is a sine wave.
Man, were those sides vertical. So vertical.
You can hear more of what's going on.
Right. There you go.
That's all right.
So summing up in the filter, you have easy access to multiple filter responses, including combination filter responses, 2 dedicated control voltage inputs, one of which is an easy attenuverter.
Nailed it!
Bingo. High resonance without worry of oscillation. Next. See, we're almost on schedule. We're 34 minutes in and we're doing great.
Next, we're going to talk about the envelopes, which is pretty straightforward. The envelopes are taken almost part for part clone of the envelopes that we used in the SV1. I love the snappiness of those envelopes, and it was the obvious choice when we wanted to put an ADSR in this to use that one. We did tweak them a little bit to sort of work within the goals of Taiga, but for all intents and purposes, and probably for everyone but me and Michael and Perry, they sound exactly the same. The difference is you get 2, which is nice because that, in my mind, was always what the SV1 lacked, was a second ADSR. So this instrument, from the moment it was conceived, was, well, we have to have 2 ADSRs.
Right. And the ADSR is very friendly to the keyboard environment so that you can get keyboard-like articulations if you want them, but the ADSR is also easily tricked into percussive attack decay type envelopes, so you sort of get the best of both types.
I like that sound.
Oh, I do.
ADSRs have, again, all these modules are fully patchable, so you have the inputs and outputs. They are normal to the MIDI, so you don't need to patch them if you're using the arpeggiator or external MIDI. Simple, simple. Now let's talk about the dynamics. And on our notes, there's a bullet point with nothing written after it because I fell asleep while I was typing and I didn't put anything there.
How come it's not just like a long string of keystrokes?
I fell asleep like this and not like face down on.
Next time when we make the movie version of that problem, we'll have this endless string of characters, or just like an E that goes on for 500 times. So,
Yes.
Too bad. Now we have no idea what to say about the dynamic section then, since you didn't write any notes.
Well, let's
I don't know.
let's look at it.
How does the thing work?
It has a couple. The top mode is an ADSR. The top mode's a VCA, so it works like you would think a standard VCA works. You have the dynamics knob is your pass through. So if we open that up, it just drones through. We're going to close that. And in VCA mode, it responds exactly like a standard VCA would do with the same response curve and the same feel. The response knob up top doesn't have a whole lot of influence on the outcome. If you have a very short attack and you listen very closely, you can hear a very subtle change, but not much.
In that mode.
Yes.
In that mode.
In VCA mode.
Which is the sort of standard clean VCA type of effect on loudness, the one that you're used to with a standard plain vanilla VCA.
Yeah, where it only affects the volume of a sound and not the harmonic content at all. In the same way, the resonance knob does not work in VCA mode.
Right.
So that's what we're listening to now. We can switch to low pass gate mode. Now we do get the added response and we do get the resonance. Now we're at full resonance, so you can tell the resonance isn't overly strong, but what it does is it adds more of an EQ bump. That's frequency dependent. So the idea is it gives it a little bit more life, but it never swings out of control or certainly never self-oscillates. But we figured because you have the filter here with the resonance there, we didn't need to overwhelm it. And internally, the sort of need for the resonance in this being really nice and smooth and then wildly out of control.
Yes, it's sharp enough to draw blood. Yeah.
Yes. The core of the dynamic circuit is actually a silent key filter, which you may or may not have heard of a silent key filter, but that's the same filter core that's in like a Korg MS-20. So if you can think of the resonance of a Korg MS-20 and how it just is wildly out of control, using a different resonance circuit to get a very different feel out of this. I'm just going to open up the filter wide open, so now we're just listening to the dynamic. And again, the ADSR is controlling this, but you have a...
There you go. You can really feel the filter quality of it.
So this is without the resonance. This is with full resonance.
And you can really feel that bump in resonance, the extra energy right there at cutoff.
And then the response. This is with no response, or a very short response, I should say. And I can bring it in. And again, because the ADSR is in here, the response is competing with the ADSR for that initial envelope. So what we can do is just turn the ADSR so we're just getting a trigger essentially. And now you can more hear the response knob. This is very short, and this is basically a sliver of the trigger coming from the ADSR, but we can open it up, and you get a really nice, percussive, almost bongo-y sound out of it.
And this type of articulation is essentially impossible with a plain vanilla VCA. It really requires this weird combination circuit that is simultaneously controlling loudness and also harmonic content in a way that changes with time dynamically.
We also have a third mode here, which we can enable. And what that does is that allows us to pluck the dynamics. So if we turn the dynamics CV, which is the amount of ADSR coming in, we turn that full left, so we're not getting any signal going through the ADSR. We're just getting this pluck. You can hear the response is basically the same, even if we bring up
That's designed as a sort of rapid shortcut to more percussive type sounds, keeping in mind that there's a lot of encouragement towards performance of this instrument.
So you can then blend in the ADSR for just blend it in a little bit, and you do get this nice control over the sound there.
Right. It's kind of a very natural sounding swell.
Another option is you can have MIDI control over the dynamics, and what that does is that bypasses the ADSR and just sends the gate directly to the dynamics. Do edit mode, and now we are completely bypassed the ADSR, and just using the square wave coming off of the MIDI gate signal to create that. And most of the time that's not necessary, but if you wanted to then use the ADSR for, say, the shape control of the oscillator. So we could take the output of ADSR2 into the shape of oscillator 1 here. Give us a little bit of movement. And that's always nice. I typically prefer an ADSR style envelope to an LFO a lot of times because it's then note-based instead of just free running.
Right, and then the sound sounds more like it's being born and dies. It has a sort of evolution over its lifetime, as opposed to that feeling where you've superimposed several cookie cutters on top of one another.
We could also try the same thing into the FM. It's getting nice and percussive. So that's an overview of how the dynamics works, and
the one wrinkle you didn't mention is that we actually have a voltage control over that response characteristic.
Oh, that's
which
right.
Would be the equivalent of kind of pushing your hand on the drum head while you beat it, so that you sort of change the length of the tightness of the drum in a way.
And I can patch that up. I just patched it into the LFO here.
Right. So if you're familiar with like Indian tabla drums, which everybody should be, they're amazing musicians, those guys. They do this trick where they kind of rub a drum while they play it, and you can get similar sorts of effects this way, where you get this kind of very evolving, sometimes burpy sort of textures. I know burpy is supposed to be bad in synthesizers.
Is burpee bad in synthesizers?
It's a standard insult of synthesizers.
Really?
Yeah. And when you buy fish oil pills, they try to take the burp out of it.
Interesting.
They say burpless on them.
Really?
Yeah. Burp less, not burp free.
Oh, burp less.
Okay, anyway, we don't have much time.
Okay.
What's left?
Okay, now, so let's, so now we've CV'd everything there. Let's just jump to the delay. We call it echoes here, which I promise you is spelled properly.
Unless you grow up somewhere where they don't spell right.
And, yeah.
Sorry, as we say in Canada. Sorry.
Slow down our sequence here. So it's an analog bucket brigade delay. It uses two 4096 stage bucket brigade chips. And one thing that I think you did a really nice job on this is this is based on the analog delay unit module that we had. But we wanted even tighter feedback. So you redesigned the feedback loop on it to get a lot more repeats before it starts to self-oscillate. So you have a lot more control in this high repeat range.
Right, which in high repeat range has a lot of reverberant qualities. It starts to sort of blur in that way that everybody seems to love. The blurring of sound is similar to the blurring of photographs, except people love it in sound. No, I mean seriously, you're like, people love reverb because it smooths everything out. But it's literally a blurring of sound, repeats that overlap one another. Oh yeah.
So the delay times on this, you get about 250 milliseconds at the maximum, maybe 300, right around there. So you can do great slapback. You can do dipping into chorus on the tighter range, but it's really meant to add depth and space to the sound.
Yeah.
An analog bucket brigade delay is never going to replicate the amount of time you can get.
It's not a looping pedal.
No. Or even with any digital delay. You know, we can't get a second of clean delay out of BBD chips. Now, you can get a second of clean delay out of it, but you end up having to cut off so much of the signal that it's just low end at that point. Because the way bucket brigade delays work is the clock for the signal is actually in the audio path. And the longer the delay time, the lower the frequency of that clock. And so you run up into a point where you can start to hear the clock because the clock starts to dip down into audio range, and you have to low pass filter it off. So the longer the delay time, the more low pass filter you need, the more high end you lose. So tuning an analog delay is always a balance of, well, I obviously want as much time as possible. I want it to be as clean as possible.
Right.
And I don't want to hear the clock. So those 3 bits, it's a challenge of, you can have 2 of them, but you can never have 3.
Right.
And you kind of just have to decide what makes sense for the job at hand. And this one has been tuned, I think, really, really well for Taiga.
Right. And again, very performance-oriented. This sort of thing would sit very nicely in the mix with other instruments in the stage environment, in part because of the ability to suddenly add repeats or spaciness or whatever.
And we could throw...
spaciness or whatever.
And we could throw... You throw reverb on it.
So that's an external reverb from the nice people at Alesis, or Alesis, or Alisis.
Yeah, that was a random reverb. We do have voltage control over the time as well, so
Alesis.
I can take, say, the ADSR that we're not using and use that for the time. So every note that triggers will slow down the sequence here.
Right, so that gives you that lovely sort of bouncing ball coming to rest, sort of an articulation.
Or you can go backwards.
The ball coming off of the floor and slowly bouncing into the air. Hey, is that all it does, Rick?
But wait, there's more. The infomercial continues. There's a few bits that don't have a UI, so to speak. They're just jacks. We have analog noise, although that is normal to the mixer, so we can listen to some noise here. Oh yeah.
Delay that noise.
No, we want to hear it now. We're running short on time.
It's lost in the post.
We also have an analog sample and hold that's tied to the clock, although you can patch over it with anything you want, so you have all the controls for sample and hold. You can run audio through it, you run CV through it. It's normal to function as sort of the standard sample and hold random generator.
Right, but you could run it really fast and do bit crushing, undersampling type effects with it as well.
Mm-hmm. And now that you've said that, I feel like we should give
Give bit crushing a chance.
Give bit crushing a chance. So I'm going to go... I always patch backwards. Do you guys patch backwards? In my mind, that's how it... I don't know. So we're going to go...
You need those cables that only go one way. Those ratcheting cables. The non-symmetrical ones. Sorry.
I think that's...
That was yesterday's joke, not today's joke. Come on, I want to hear it.
It was yesterday's joke. I feel like I've done something wrong.
You're in sub-audio.
Oh.
Aren't you?
This demo's working great. Out of one. Into...
Kind of like you don't really know how to use this thing. Well, the output of the sample and hold isn't necessarily... Did you put the input of the sample and hold into the mixer or something? And then you turn the level all the way down.
No, I went into the channel 1.
Oh, you went into channel 1.
I don't know what I did. Anyway.
Trust me, it'll sound really cool if you do that.
Come back for the demo at 8 o'clock, and you will see all how that works. But we don't have time to...
Crush a bit at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Not now.
I don't have time to mess with my port patching right now.
8 o'clock Eastern Standard.
Line output,
Daylight.
headphone output, they do share a volume control. Make it easy. On the digital side, and I'm not going to go through all the digital stuff. I'll probably do a separate video for this and walk through each one of the digital sections. But basically, you have a MIDI to CV converter. There's an arpeggiator sequencer in there, a random sequencer generator.
A little envelope.
There is a mod tools. So if you're familiar with the mod tools in East Beast and West Pest, there's a version of that in here. So you get a decay envelope, a clock synced LFO, a random clock sync random generator. You also have octave up and octave down, so you can change the octave of your MIDI controlled oscillators. And that's Taiga. It's making it's like stretching in the wind right now.
It's like those trees that you pass in the forest where it's creaking and then you go put your head up against the trunk.
I think that's what it's doing. Just wants us to know it's here. So now is the time. If you have questions for us, please ask us some questions and we will maybe patch up something vaguely interesting for question time. Let's see. Can I qualify the noise by the color thing? I would call it pinkish. It's analog noise. It's based on an open transistor, so it's not... a lot of times if you hear pure white noise, that's going to be a digital noise source to give you a perfect pure white noise.
It's somewhere between white and pink. It hasn't actually passed through a pink noise filter, but it's not quite flat across the spectrum to be totally white. Are there other questions that are...
Dave Cusick says, sounds amazing. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Christopher Geisler wants to know what it tastes like. I don't know.
We've only licked the back panel. We haven't licked the front yet. And the back panel was...
Oh, here's an actual good question.
Oh, thank heavens.
Whew. P. Maxwell Ward wants to know, is the FM linear or exponential? The FM is linear. Although if you want to do exponential FM, you could simply go into the pitch inputs and use one of the mixer channels as an attenuator for that.
Yes.
So you can do both.
So you can do, yes, exactly. You can do linear and exponential simultaneously. Because each oscillator has a volt per octave input. Could I patch a chorus flanger with the BBD? Wait, now there are 100 questions suddenly.
Yay!
The BBD is not optimized for chorus-like effects. On the shortest end of the BBD, it's I wouldn't call it a very effective chorus.
Well, let's.
Or maybe we can demonstrate that and let you decide what's effective. I'm going to put this thing down. Oh, is this mountable in your Eurorack case? Yes, indeed it is. Thank you, Heaven Danielle above our heads. It's Eurorack format, which means it will fit in a rack. That was the first thing on our list that we never said, I think. Can you remove ADSRs from MIDI control? Yes, you can patch, you can trigger them with any analog signal. Can the filter be bypassed, run in parallel or series with external modules? Yeah, the filter has inputs and outputs that are on the patch bay, so you can put it anywhere you like in any kind of patch.
So this is, I would call this a chorus-esque effect here.
It's chorus-esque. It's not quite as crazy as like a dedicated chorus module, like the florists. Actually, that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
I take it back. That's a pretty nice chorus. Well, there you go. Thanks for asking the question. What else did these questions in?
Can you remove the ADSRs from MIDI control?
I already answered that.
You did?
Yeah. Can you patch and?
Oh yeah, you
patch
can,
them externally
you can
to
patch
trigger
over
them externally.
Yeah.
Okay. Will the oscillators go below their lowest manual speed with voltage control?
Yes.
Country of origin of manufacturer, and it looks better than 60 HP. We swear to the good Lord that it's 60 HP. Where?
Country of origin of manufacturer? I don't see that question.
It's in the same.
Oh, it's made in China.
WD. Made in, well, and here.
It's designed here and manufactured in China. We have a great team over in China that we've worked with on this for 3 years, and they're really smart people, really good.
Emmett Henry asks, will this be offered with a controller module as a larger system like the SV1B and KB1 were sold as the System 201?
No, this is as it is. The Voltage Lab coming later in the year will be, it comes with a controller, but that's another conversation.
No, the licked back panel units will not be signed or certified cootie free. They obviously have cooties on them.
Yeah, that's understood, I think.
Yeah, cooties is cooties. Is there any way to patch an external signal into the wave shaping circuitry directly?
No.
Unfortunately not. Not on this device. Sorry about that.
Is the Frog module still coming? Yes. Are we still making a drum machine? Yes. It's on my desk at work.
How many HP is the Taiga? It is 60 HP. All the data for the instrument itself are going to be available in multiple places online, including the Pittsburgh Modular website. So you can,
if you go to our website, you can download the manual. All that information's at the very back.
There's a full manual PDF as well as quick start guides, and within the manual it will tell you exactly how wide it is, how much space it takes up, and also how much of your power supply it will eat if you put it into a rack. But we're selling it as a standalone device with its own power supply.
It will eat a lot of your power supply. I think it's 650 positive rail and 475 negative rail.
Next question, is the Taiga different from the proposed upcoming Voltage Lab 2, or does this replace it? No, it's completely separate from the Voltage Lab 2, which is still coming up.
Are we still making drum machine? Yes. Oh, we already answered that one. Will you go to Super Booth this year? Yes, we will. Can't wait. How gainy does the gain get?
The highest gain is a multiple of 30, so 30 times the level of the input signal. That works pretty well with a dynamic mic, for instance. Although obviously the connector is mini, so you'd need to have XLR to mini in order to get that. But a gain of 30 is significant.
Heliospherical Dread says, for racking, does it come with the ribbon cable? No, it does not.
What was the reasoning behind not having the filter fully close? Also, some have commented the tolerance for snappy envelopes is very tight. Is there any way to recalibrate response on the ADSR?
As far as the ADSR goes, these are actually, that was the one thing that we changed from the SV1 is they're actually less snappy on here than they were on the SV1. There's no way to recalibrate them. You would have to go in and swap out a resistor. But what you're doing when you do that really is you're adding slew or you're adding slope to the attack. You're just changing how long it takes to go from 0 volts up to the initial 10 volts. So the snappiness is how straight you want that. And the SV1 was straight up. This one we've added, I think we put a teeny tiny resistor there. So it may take 2 milliseconds or something. But no, you can't change that without a resistor value.
Right. Regarding the filter, no filter fully closes. It's a filter that's it's a 2-pole filter. So when you say fully closed, you mean fully closed to a particular cutoff frequency. That being said, it could be adjustable by if you actually went into the board, but it's very low pass for any signal of interest. But there's no such thing as a so-called brick wall filter in audio.
Yeah, you start to run into the point where it's
right. It's only a
it's LFO at that point.
And even a 4-pole filter doesn't have infinite cutoff. It just has twice as much cutoff as a 2-pole filter, which is what this one is. But I hope that answers your question.
It says, can I make an 808 bass with it? You can make nice kick drum sounds with it. I've done all the demos I've done with this, all the songs and all the videos, all the sounds were made with this. So if there's a couple that have kick drums in them. I know there's one coming up in a couple days that has a really nice kick drum. But yeah, you can definitely get, does it sound exactly like an 808? No, because 808s sound like 808s.
And this sounds like this, yeah.
Yeah, there's infinite arguments about this is an 808 or this isn't. It's not an 808, so you're not going to get exact sounds. But you can do that, send the ADSR to the pitch and have it, a sine wave that does that bump thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you have 100 other drum sounds right next to them, which you don't have in the 808.
Yes. Can I give you some specs on the delay circuit? The delay circuit is it's an analog BBD delay circuit, so it has two 4096 step BBD chips in it with a custom circuit designed by Nicol that allows us to get a tremendous amount of feedback out of it before it starts to self-oscillate. Even then, I think I use this sound so much, but you can get way up there, which is really nice. Beyond that, I'm not sure what specs you would be interested in knowing. I don't know the cutoff frequency of the filter offhand.
A lot of questions.
Danielle reminds me to say that pre-orders are available now. So you can make a pre-order if you want, shipping in about 4 weeks. The units are built and they have shipped from the factory. They are currently en route to the distributors.
Somebody asks if they can swap the knobs. You can swap the knobs, but we're going to ship them with these knobs.
Yeah.
It's not so hard to get your own knobs and replace them, though.
They come right off their D-shaft knobs.
You can get a lot of D-shaft knobs in whatever size and color you like. If you do want to replace the knobs, we recommend getting them in a very similar diameter to the ones that we've used, so that you have, you can get your fingers in there.
I would also recommend the same colors and the same shapes.
And at that point, you're just going to use the knobs that we shipped it with.
I'm biased though. I designed these knobs and I'm really proud of them. They feel nice and I think they look really nice. But again, you be you. I'm not here to judge. Does it integrate a polarity inverter for ADSR? The frequency CV on the filter has a inverter built in, so you can invert the ADSR going to the filter, yes. You can also invert it going to the delay time if you send it there.
This is a good question. Regarding the jacks, what are the differences between the white text and the colored text labels? You didn't mention that. You want to just describe the visual language a little bit?
Oh yeah, sure.
It's the inputs and the outputs, basically.
So there's two separate sections, and on the top section here, you have the white text, which shows you exactly what that knob does, or that button does if you use it. And that is going to do it every time you touch it, with the exception of some of the buttons, well, all the buttons to be fair, have yellow text written under them. And what that means is that's going to be what happens if you hold the edit button. That's going to be what happens if you hold the edit button down and press it. So mode, for example, which is your filter mode, under it says LFO range. So if I hold edit and hit mode, it now changes the LFO range to audio rate. If I hit it again, it would go back to LFO. So that's the language up top. And the language down below is, there's two different colors again. There's green and white. So you have green is input and white is output. It's that simple. There's also some arrows down here, and that's just pointing to the normals. So for example, the dynamics output here has an arrow going to the echoes input. And that's just letting you know that that signal is happening internally. You can patch over it. Like if I patch into the echoes, everything will stop because I broke the connection.
What happened?
But I could patch into the dynamics. And now this patch cable, although it's doing a job, I don't need it because it was doing that internally. But that's really as simple as it would get.
Right, and as you can see, it's designed, if you're not familiar with the SV1, that's fine. It's designed to be used very easily without doing any patching. As you see, almost every example that we gave you all today involved less than one patch cable.
Well, a lot of that comes down to doing a demo as well.
Yeah, but I mean, you can learn the instrument very well without thinking that you have to be a master of patching or understanding the routing. You can follow your ears around the instrument and get a lot of interesting results before you actually develop, a more analytical understanding of it. Somebody asked, what are we listening to these days? I listened to Lionel Belasco last night, some really excellent calypso, and Kitty Lester, who was a great country singer. What was the last thing you listened to?
Actually, last night I was listening to Pete Namlook, Silence 1. It was a really, really good album. Highly recommended.
Will you be servicing these units in Pittsburgh like you do with your modules?
Yes, we will be servicing them. Well, the units in Pittsburgh, or the units in the US will be serviced in Pittsburgh, and the units in the EU will be serviced in the EU now, which is awesome, because that saves everybody time and money. Would this make sense to get for someone that already bought an East Beast and West Pest, or do they cover much of the ground presented here? If you feel like the East Beast and the West Pest, you've hit a wall, maybe, but I think they play really well together. I've had all three for a year and a half now, and they sort of find a place. I think the East Beast and the West Pest are being they're so immediate at making the sound that I find I use those a lot for that. This I use more for experimentation because you have more patch points and you have more access ins and outs to everything. And each thing has a couple more features. The East Beast and the West Pest are definitely very focused, where this is meant to be more of an open playground. So there's not really an answer there. I don't know.
Oh, someone's asking, is there a way to patch the noise level to be controllable through ZV, or is it purely by hand? There is only one VCA in the box. So if you want to control the noise level, you'd have to do it through the filter or through the dynamics section. But independently, no, you couldn't control its level independently under voltage control. Unless you, for instance, used it as a control voltage source for one of the oscillators and made a kind of a pitched noise out of it, which is actually a pretty good way to make noise. Very good for whistly type sounds. Does that make sense?
I do that a lot, where I send the noise into the FM.
Exactly.
Just blast it, and it sounds noisy.
If you send noise directly into the control voltage input of an oscillator, you will get a noise that is colored by the offset controls of the oscillator. That's a nice way to sort of control noise, and then you don't necessarily feel like you have to control the noise independently, unless you have a very specific question about that patch. But there are ways around that.
Does the filter have key tracking? I'll be buying this for sure, by the way. I still adore my microvolt. It doesn't self-oscillate, so the idea that it plays volt per octave, it doesn't do that. But you have a frequency V input where instead, you could go into that and hit it with the pitch output from the MIDI to CV converter and just use that. So certainly, for that purpose, you absolutely could.
Right, but it doesn't, for instance, have a dedicated volt per octave input, as you would see like on, I don't know, like the ARP Odyssey or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we show you the potential of using Taiga as a drum machine with sequencer? I think that's beyond the scope of today, but I can certainly do that in a future live stream.
And it's definitely something that you'll probably be hearing tomorrow if you tune into the live stream with Richard and Bus Crates and Soy Sauce, because they do a lot of that kind of thing.
Yes, and I will absolutely be using it.
That's tomorrow night at 8 p.m. See how I cross-linked?
I like that. And I'll be, Herman's got one, Bus has got one, I'm going to have a couple of Taigas. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So we will do percussion sounds then.
So they'll be featuring the instruments in a much more exploratory way instead of what today is a relatively dry presentation of features.
Yoda says you should have Michael on the streams more often.
Don't say that. No.
I agree.
No. Thank you.
Ricardo wants to know, can I get these knobs for my SV1? No, you can't. I have, if you've seen the live streams, I have one that has these knobs on it, but these are D shaft. Where's the camera? There it is. These are D shaft and the SV1 is not. So I had to go in with an X-Acto knife and cut out this, and it turned out to be a giant mess. So, and they're not reliable, and it was terrible. I did it to see if I could do it, and I could, but it's not.
Or God forbid you take a Dremel tool to the shafts of your SV1 potentiometers just so that you could fit D shaft knobs on there. I would not recommend it.
No.
You could also, put your computer in your toaster, but I wouldn't recommend that either.
Have you often extended it with your Eurorack, or have you had it standalone mainly? It's been mostly standalone. I've had it in my Eurorack a lot, but because my Eurorack, I tend to do a lot of performances with Herman and take it out a lot. This has sort of been on its own because I would have to take it out each time I went somewhere. So there's a couple times I've performed with it, and I've just sort of put a little piece of cloth over it before and after I was done playing. And I think it works really well in a larger context. And going forward now, this will be a permanent part of my larger setup. My SV1 will be coming out, and this will be going and replacing it. It's true. can I route the ADSR with the slow attack inverted into shapers and make the amp ADSR with D equals slow? Oh my goodness. I think that's, it's not a silly question, it's a complicated question.
Right. I mean, the answer is yes, but we probably won't patch it up now.
Yes.
Well, actually, could you? Yeah, we'd have to figure out a way to invert it, I think. The trick is that you have to be able to invert the ADSR before you put it into the control path of the folder.
Oh, I see.
There's not a dedicated inverter.
That you're not going to be able to do, because you don't have a dedicated modular inverter.
Nope, sorry. Sorry, instrument fails. Don't buy it. It's broken. No, but you can find a way around that with an external inverter. Or find something that inverts. Sometimes you've got a device that inverts the signal accidentally. You don't necessarily need a dedicated inverter, like a lot of filters invert.
Is there a chance to see the local parks at Cascading Florist? No, not today. Another vote? Yeah, another vote for Michael. Absolutely. When is Lifeform's Voltage Lab Mark II coming? Later this year. Can you please speed patch a complex drone example?
We can mime it.
There we go. Here we go. We'll turn the MIDI tracking off. Let's see what we got going on here. We've got... Listen to the oscillators. So there's... There's a drone, and here's another oscillator. And then the nice drone always has a really high component to it. So we'll add that.
Is this from Mama's drone recipe? Always said put a little high frequency in there, honey. You're gonna like your drone that much better, just trust me. I have to say, this device really does excel at drone-y type things because you have not just 3 oscillators, but 3 oscillators with all that folding and mixing options on the waveforms within them. So each one of them can produce a very thick texture, and then 3 times that thick texture, plus filtering, which is also screwing up the waveform, and the dynamics controller, which is also screwing up the waveform. And you've got the possibility of a very complicated evolving texture.
And if you're really interested in hearing this thing drone for a long extended period of time, a few days ago I did a live stream. It's called
Ambient Fish.
Ambient Fish.
Yes.
And that is an hour and a half of a camera pointed at my fish tank and me droning with just Taiga. So that would give you, I think, what you're looking for there. Oh. The feedback on the delay is amazing. How different is it, the feedback circuit, than the one on the VRL? The feedback circuit is
better.
It's better. It's different. It's better.
It's different by being better. It allows more repeats before runaway feedback, basically. It's optimized for that.
I.e. a modification or redesign. Oh, yeah, it's a redesign from the Voltage Lab. What is the distortion capability? The distortion capability is the overdrive in the preamp. You have a gain up to 30, but it's soft clipping, so it does give you a nice overdrive. Now I'm using it in sort of a feedback loop, and you can hear that overdrive at the top. I think it sounds really nice.
And you can patch that overdrive anywhere you like it. You can patch it on just one oscillator, or you can patch it on the output of the mixer before the before going into the filter, or however you like. It's placeable anywhere within the chain.
You should have Michael on the stream more often.
Stop saying that.
I'm just reading the comments.
Don't read those.
LOL. +1 vote for more Michael.
Stop it.
Next biome semi-modular system when?
Oh wow. What's the next one going to be called?
The Voltage Lab 2.
No, the next biome.
I can't say that.
I don't know. We're open to suggestions.
Yeah. Kind of seems like this synth could be an option for 3-node chords. Yeah, you have 3 oscillators. You can tune them. It does have a paraphonic mode where you can patch a 2-note and play 2 notes at a time. And the reason it does 2 instead of 3 is that there's only 2 digital analog converters in it, because it's mostly analog. So there's a digital analog converter in the pitch output, obviously, and then there's the second one in the velocity output. So I can use that to create a second note. The CC output is not a true DAC. It's using pulse width modulation to generate a CV voltage. And the problem with that in the context of using it for pitch is that it has a slew. And I tried it, and it just didn't sound right. You can always hear that slew, and it drove me crazy. So that's why it's 2 instead of 3. But the 2, it works really nice. Can you patch an oscillator out into another oscillator's FM to get pitch tracking on the FM? To a point, these are not through zero oscillators. You can take it so far, but eventually you are going to start to lose tracking. We stopped scrolling.
Oh, keep scrolling.
Greg gave us $5, but thank you very much. I appreciate that. We will use that towards more tea. Or coffee. No, definitely tea. Would you be open to hosting a synth modular meetup in Pittsburgh? Yes, actually, we're talking with someone right now. We used to do one every month down at a place called Spirit, pre-pandemic, and we are talking with someone right now to do something very similar, but we're not sort of running the whole thing on a monthly basis. So yeah, we're totally up for that. Love it. When we host a Pittsburgh Crew concert live stream, I don't think the Pittsburgh Crew wants to do that. Maybe, but probably not. I think the closest we're going to get to that is the jams with me, Herman, and Bus. But certainly everyone else in the crew is welcome to join in anytime they like. So I think, that's a nice name. Paramo? Go with that. So I think we've been doing this now for about 90 minutes. We've had some fun. We've shed some tears together. We've had some laughs.
It's been fun, but let's be honest.
Yeah. The dream it's come, it's gone. WD, thank you very much for the $9.99. More tea. I appreciate it. We will be back again today to do this again at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So
that's Rust Belt time.
Yeah, so that's about 4.5 hours from now, and that one we'll be hanging out and taking more questions and making more sounds. But thank you all for tuning in. Thank you so much for hanging out. This is 117 people watching right now. I've never paid attention to that during, but that's a heck of a lot more than normally hang out to these things. So I appreciate it. It's been a blast hanging out with Michael.
Thank you for coming too. Appreciate your questions, and hopefully the thing made sense. And if you still want to hear more or clarify a question that you didn't get answered the first time and you're able to tune in tonight, please do so, and we will be there in, what is it, like a few hours from now? 4 hours?
Yeah, 4.5 hours or so.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And we will talk to you soon.